Hey guys, how's it going? Likebutter here, back with another Division 2 video. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the PTS, my overall thoughts of the PTS. I put about 10 hours into it, and I have a pretty good idea of the feedback that I want to give. The whole reason of the public test servers is to give as much feedback as possible, and I have a decent amount of feedback on it, you know? So before I went into the PTS, I thought that this patch was going to be really good. I still like a lot of the things that are in this PTS. I think there were a good amount of changes made to give players more incentive to go into the dark zone, and that's definitely the case here, because the only way to get above 500 or up to 515 is going to be from the dark zone. Because of that, I think this is going to incentivize a lot of people to kind of jump out of their comfort zone a bit and enter the dark zone. Remember, the dark zone is both PvP and PvE. You're not always going to be engaging in PvP. You're not always going to be engaging in PvE. It's kind of the best of both. And I think that's going to definitely impress a lot of people that may have not wanted to give the dark zone a chance. And it gives incentive to go there, which means that the servers are going to be more populated and you'll be able to meet more people and whatnot. But I will tell you right now, from what I've tested in the PTS, the dark zone is absolutely miserable when it comes to the occupied dark zone. Now, the reason for this is because obviously we got some pretty hefty nerfs to some of the big talents in the game. For example, Berserk, I think Unhinged got a pretty big nerf, Frenzy got a pretty big nerf. So most of the damage dealing talents got a major nerf. And because of that, and the fact that they also buffed the health and the armor of the NPCs, on top of the fact that they also fixed a bug that was making us do more damage to NPCs, with all these things combined, it makes the occupied dark zone almost impossible to go in solo. Now, I understand that the occupied dark zone is going to have the best drops, therefore it should have the hardest content. But it doesn't really feel like the hardest content. It really just kind of feels like really spongy enemies. Like, I'm talking about, it reminds me of like 1.3 NPCs with how spongy the enemies are. And they're still flanking. They're still throwing non-stop like EMP grenades. If you don't know, the pulse grenades that damage you through walls are super frustrating because it seems like the game wants you to take cover, right? And when you're taking cover and you're fighting these landmarks, it's like the NPCs have every answer in the book and every counter in the book to counter exactly what you're doing. They'll throw an EMP on the other side of the cover, which will then make you have to move completely because you can't shoot it from the cover that you're on. And the only way to really get, one of those killed, if it's placed perfectly, which the NPCs seem to always place it perfectly on another piece of cover. So for example, on this van that I'm on, they'll throw it right on the other side of the van. So the only way that I can shoot that EMP is if I go out in the open and shoot that EMP, or if I have to move to another piece of cover. Then the NPCs pretty much just all focus you and laser you down. On top of that, they also have drones, non-stop drones coming in. You're gonna hear the beeping noise over and over and over again. It's gonna come, it's gonna knock you out of cover. You're going to try to use a med kit, but you're not going to have time because the NPCs are flanking you. And I think a big problem with this is because of how tanky the NPCs are, which means you're not killing them as fast, which means they're pretty much using everything they got in the book over and over and over again. So you've got the rushers that will pretty much push you out of cover and flank you. And then you have the drone NPCs that are throwing drones constantly. You have the big tank machine gun guys that have the minigun that have incendiary bullets that are constantly setting you on fire over and over. It is absolutely miserable in the occupied dark zone. Now, when I was playing with a group in the occupied dark zone, the content wasn't necessarily hard. It was more of just feeling like it was taking too long. Like the enemies are so unbelievably spongy that even with a full group who's all min-max and decent players, it's going to take a very long time to clear these landmarks. Now, I don't know if this is the vision they had for it, but you guys know how I stand as far as the dark zone goes. I think that the NPCs should be a challenge. I don't think that the NPCs should be so hard that you're on a landmark for like 10 minutes, though. If you have a coordinated team, you have the best gear in the game, it really shouldn't feel like that. And I think they're trying to keep a little bit of area for that power creep. to hit up to 515. We also have to remember, since the highest gear is going to be in the Dark Zone, there are going to be a lot of solo and duo players venturing into the occupied DZ. And because of that, I definitely think that the NPC's health and armor need a bit of a nerf. They still do a ton of damage. They're still constantly throwing drones at you and grenades and shooting, you know, M203s that are knocking you out of cover. You're going to have a terrible time in this occupied Dark Zone if they don't at least nerf the NPCs a bit. If they lower the amount of times that they throw grenades, or maybe even take the damage off the EMP grenades altogether. I think it's enough, honestly, that it keeps you from using your abilities, but the fact that it also disables all your abilities, keeps you from using abilities, and does tons of damage. On this build, I'm running like 40% hazard protection. I would assume that hazard protection like would help against the EMP damage. It doesn't even make sense that the EMPs do damage, but maybe they could take the damage off those and you know, maybe lower the amount of drone NPCs that spawn, or the amount of drones they can throw in a specific time. But it just feels absolutely miserable when you're doing this solo, because you just got drone after drone. You're not going to be able to use your skills. You're going to be getting flanked constantly. You're going to have M203s knocking you out of cover. You're going to have heavies with incendiary bullets constantly setting you on fire over and over, and it is absolutely obnoxious. So I think a huge problem is just that the NPCs are staying alive too long. Like, you're going to see yourself constantly running out of ammo and stuff like that because of how tanky the NPCs are. So I would really highly suggest to the developers that you guys tone down the NPCs in the occupied Dark Zone. I think the damage seems okay, like the bullet damage. You can definitely feel that they're doing a little bit less damage. Not too much, though. You can still get melted when you're out of cover pretty instantaneously. But definitely lower the health of these enemies for sure. And the armor as well. Like, that it just feels like, you know, sometimes there's even a red enemy. I can sit there and put an entire mag directly into his face and it won't kill him. Or, for example, a purple will run at me. I'll have no armor. I'll literally have the full buff of Berserk, and it'll still take a mag and a half to take them down. Which, like I said, you're going to be using a lot more ammo. So honestly, that would be the first major bit of feedback that I would give. Also, the time to kill in PvP, some people are saying that it doesn't really feel different. It does feel very different, at least to me. And I always loved the fast time to kill. I understand that you don't want the time to kill so fast that it makes your build feel like shit. But I feel like a huge culprit of why the time to kill was as fast as it was because of those very overpowered damage talents that we were seeing. For example, you know, Berserk or Unhinged or Frenzy, like all these things together, I feel like we're making the time to kill a lot faster than it was intended. So right now, what we have is we had all the major damage dealing talents nuked pretty hard. And now we have, like, we're doing 30% less damage to players as well. So instead of 100% leaking through in the ODZ, now only 40% is leaking through. And then in the normalized DZs, instead of 70% leaking through, only 40% is leaking through. And I think that was a little bit overly nerfed, or overtuned, I should say. I think instead of a 40% modifier, I would like to see more of 55, maybe in week 2. And then we'll test it and see if it's too fast again, then maybe tone it down to 50. But I think with all the nerfs to the talents, you're just naturally doing way less damage. Also, you got to remember, it's going to be harder to get crit chance and crit damage as well, because surgical and critical are getting nerfed pretty hard too. So I think all those things combined are making us as players just overall do a lot less damage. And I think if they just toned it to like 50%, or 55% modifier, and then basically just nerf down the NPCs of the Black Tusk, because the other NPCs didn't feel overly tanky. It was just the Black Tusk. Like, the normalized Dark Zones felt fine. It felt like the damage that you were doing to the NPCs seemed pretty normal. So I would definitely like try to take that down. I mean, dude, some of the warhounds, the tanks that run around, they one-shot you. Those things take like 4 to 5 mags. Now, obviously, if you're using an LMG, a high damage LMG build, it might not be as bad. But remember, we don't want LMGs to be the only things that are viable. We want all the different weapon types and all the different like guns to be viable. And, you know, I can tell you right now that SMGs and ARs will not be viable if the NPCs stay like this. Everyone's going to pretty much have to run damage dealing LMGs to have enough bullets to kill these enemies. So yeah, that's definitely the first thing that I would do. And then, like I said, the second thing would be changing the PvP modifier a bit, because I noticed what happened when they upped this PvP modifier. The chicken dance came back, and it is very much alive, and I know it's a thing in the live game, but trust me, it is not nearly as bad as it is in this PTS. I was streaming it the first day, and basically what would happen is you'd have two players. As long as they were decent players, they'd be fighting, and then they would kind of be using cover, and they would use pretty much all of their med kits until eventually one pushed the other with a defender drone, and that was pretty much it. They would run up, they'd hip fire, they'd run around in circles. You know, whenever they up the time to kill, there's always going to be that chicken dance element, because it's obviously harder to hit an enemy that's moving. And that's why when you see some of these other YouTubers, which I'm surprised that they don't pick up on this because it's pretty simple, they sit there and they compare, you know, standing 5 feet from each other, and they compare the time to kill from the last patch and this patch, saying that it's pretty much the same. Well, yeah, it's going to be this like almost the same, because the difference in like 1.5 second time to kill and 1 second time to kill, you're not going to really notice a huge difference there, because you're standing 2 feet away pummeling all your shots into someone's head. The time to kill isn't going to feel like a huge difference. But when you have damage drop off and you have enemies moving and you have them taking cover and stuff, you're going to notice the time to kill is so much longer, and it creates this 1.2 effect from Division 1, where everyone's so tanky that nobody dies and everyone's just running around in circles, hip firing. And I know they removed the crit chance off of hip fire, but the defender drone is still way too overpowered in PvP. It actually feels even stronger now because you're a little bit tankier, which means that you know, you taking a little bit of those shots, you know, because it's only 25% chance to you know, deflect one of those bullets, you're going to feel like you're taking even less damage. I think the defender drone, or the deflector drone, whatever you want to call it, it really needs a rework in PvP. It is very bad for the game. Being able to just pop it and then just immediately rush. Make it so that you have to be stationary for it to work, or make it so that instead of completely making you immune to bullets, you have like a 50% chance for it to reduce the damage. So maybe it reduces the speed of that the bullet hits you, thus doing a little bit less damage. They could do something like that. But dude, the deflector drones are still so unbelievably obnoxious. It really sucks that when you're in a fight, you know, you have two players. If one player has a defender drone, that player with the defender drone is always going to win that engagement, because the amount of damage that it blocks, even though 25% may not seem like a lot, in a game like the Division, trust me, it is. It's like having, dude, it's like having 100% mitigation 25% of the time. That may not seem like a big deal, but trust me, it is. And because of that, it's definitely flown, you know, the fights into random, you know, directions. Like it's so unpredictable. The second you see someone pop that defender drone, you know that there's just really not anything you can do. There's a lot of things they could do. They could nerf the overall health of the defender drone. They could lower the time frame even more. I personally think they need to make it so that bullets still leak through. Because now, you know, with the 40% damage modifier, you got to remember, so when you're hitting somebody that's using a defender drone, the bullets that happen to do leak through are only doing 40% damage now instead of 100% damage. So now, like, you know, before with the 100% damage modifier, or I guess like you could say 0% modifier, they didn't change anything in the ODZ. And sometimes you can melt people through that defender drone because, you know, you may get lucky on a couple of really hard hits and that could, you know, potentially put them down. But now it's like, oh man, because you're basically getting 100% mitigation, and then every shot that does leak through is only doing 40% damage. So it gives that player a huge amount of time to pop skills, to use med kits, to get behind cover, that kind of thing. So I love, like, I understand that the time to kill was too fast, and I get that, and I think people like really didn't like that, but I promise you that isn't the reason why you feel like there's like a lack of outplaying players. It's not because of the time to kill, it's because of the skills that just do not like feel useful. Like the skills in this game feel very bland and boring, and I think a lot of them need reworks. And Yeah, like that's just what I think, and I think all it's gonna do, if we increase the time to kill too much, you're just gonna see the hip firing chicken dance and like super long fights again, and it's just not gonna be that fun. So we'll see. I definitely think they should try like a middle point, see what it's like with the modifier being at like 50 or 55% now that we have all of our talents pretty much nuked into the ground, and see if that time to kill feels a little better. Because when I was PvPing in this PTS, I was noticing most of the gunfights were ending up close again. And that was a problem in the Division 1. Pretty much any gunfights out of like 10 meters would never result in a kill because of the fact that people could constantly use heals and med kits and that kind of thing. Well, now what's kind of happening is people are moving up in cover closer and closer. And if you want that type of gameplay, I guess that's great. And I still haven't really tried the full 4v4 PvP gameplay yet. I think the best we got was like 3v5 or 3v3 or 3v4. But I could tell you that the time to kill was a lot longer. And I mean, if people like that longer time to kill, that's cool. I personally don't. I think like when there's PvP where it just kind of beats around the bush and you got these two players that have like a 3-4 minute fight, it just, I don't know. To me, the problem wasn't so much the fast time to kill. It was the downtime in between the fights that really kind of like ruined the PvP for me. And now that they've removed the road cooldown, the normalized dark zone feels so much better. They also made a huge change to the turrets. They didn't really like specify this on State of the Game. They really didn't talk about it, but they made some huge improvements to the turrets where the turrets won't just laser you instantaneously outside of the checkpoint anymore, which is going to give rogues a lot more room to breathe. And it's also going to give, you know, players who accidentally run into checkpoints a second or two to run out. That's what happened with me. I ran into a checkpoint on accident, and whereas before you would instantly get shocked, now you have a few seconds to get out before it blasts you. So that's definitely a huge improvement, and there are a lot of big improvements to this patch. I actually kind of agree with the nerfing of the talents. You know, as long as they take down the health and the armor of the Black Tusk a little bit, I think it'll be in a really good spot. And then, you know, just tweak the PvP modifier a bit as well, because obviously, like, you know, the time to kill, you don't want it to be too fast, but if it goes back to like 1.2 where the time to kill was incredibly long, I don't know how much I would enjoy the PvP in this game. I guess time will tell. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop the video a like. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Have you played the PTS? What do you think so far? And do you have any suggestions? I'd love to read what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one. Have a good one. Take care, everybody.